Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Pedovich here at WCNC. Welcome into Live Weather Impact for this Monday, October 20th. And boy, it finally feels like legit October weather. This was the coolest morning we've had so far this season. The afternoon was gorgeous as well, and you're probably saying it was really cool, Brad. It was exactly near normal. It was like the first time in a long time we had an average day, and that's how warm it's actually been recently. Let's take a look at our views because we're going to start missing some of these here pretty soon because the sun is setting earlier and earlier. It's not a shock here, right? 6:42 tonight is the official sunset here in Charlotte, and look at those views out there. Golden hour is upon us, golden glow because of the leaves changing. Even here in the Piedmont, we're starting to see some fall color, and it's kind of in the low end, but it's starting to accelerate pretty quickly. And I tell you what, days like this will do it because cool nights, warm afternoons, that's this week in a nutshell. 44 this morning, so yeah, that is below average, but just slightly. 49 is the normal low, but the high, 72, exactly. That's room temperature, right? We are right at average. And where are we right now? Just after 6 o'clock. The sun sets within the next 15 minutes here, and temperatures are cooling down quickly. This is the time of year where once the sun does go down, the temperature drops quickly. And if you're wondering why I don't have color contours behind us, that's an AWS issue. So we have some data, but we are getting some issues with that AWS outage as well. But 68 in Charlotte, 56 up in Boone. Just a beautiful, beautiful evening out there. Let me show you how cool it was this morning because, as I mentioned, this was the coolest so far this season. Officially up at Beach Mountain, by the way, 32. That's their first freeze. That's a little bit behind. They also had the first trace of sleet and snow up there. I got a couple pictures of sleet, and again, it accumulated after coming off a metal roof, so it wasn't like it was a bunch, but it slid off the roof, and there was some sleet, and I heard some reports out of Boone of the sound of sleet pellets mixing with that rain about 12:30, 1 o'clock last night. But look at the low in Charlotte, 44. That was a warm spot. It was 39 in Concord and Gastonia, so it was a cool morning this morning, and this is very similar territory to where we will be tomorrow morning as well. So it was chilly, and just to give you an idea, again, will it be the exact number? Probably pretty close in some locations. We were 44 in Charlotte. I'd say we'd be in the same ballpark, 45. Wouldn't be surprised to see some upper 30s. It is a pretty good setup for radiational cooling tonight. But tomorrow, huge, what we call diurnal swing. We could jump, in some instances, almost 40 degrees. So think about it. We could go from 39 in some neighborhoods to 79. That's a distinct possibility tomorrow. So a big swing in temperatures, 30 to 40 degree jump, and that's it. That's really a byproduct of how dry and clear and perfect these conditions are. We're going to talk a lot about this coming up with Tim in a minute, but we've got some comet viewing going on this week, Comet Lemon. We'll kind of debunk some of the myths and some of the truth. And the biggest myth is that this is going to be naked eye visible. It is not. Trust me. There's not many places that will have naked eye visibility unless you're pretty far north in the darkest of dark locations. But just a simple pair of binoculars, nothing fancy, even your smartphone zoomed in camera, 1 or 2 second exposure, you'll see this. And we'll talk more about this. We'll talk about the meteor shower, which is kind of a non-event to me. I much rather spend my effort looking for this than the meteor shower, which is not a big deal. We've got plenty of clear skies for stargazing, by the way, so get outside, enjoy it. Beautiful conditions. Dry cold front tomorrow. You see that front? Not much rain. You thought there was no rain yesterday. 7/100ths of an inch in Charlotte. That was a pretty big deal because it was the first measurable rainfall in 19 days. Let me repeat that. 19 days, 0 in the rain gauge until yesterday. And we're like, it rained, but it was 0.07 inches. So it was not a ton. Tomorrow looks like even less. So that front moves through, and what it does, it reinforces the cool, dry air, and we actually end up with even cooler conditions for the middle of the week. Here's a close-up view of the Futurecast. So right there, 6 o'clock, maybe a shower. Is it going to be over Statesville? Probably not. We're not good enough to pinpoint that exact location, but somewhere along that front, somebody's going to see some rain, and then it's going to push through, and most people will be dry. Just a lot of wind, cool, dry conditions moving in. But I do think there'll be some northwest flow snow rain mix again up in West Virginia. The cool lows this week, a lot of 40s. So the one thing, we've kind of turned the corner. We're now consistently cool. I think this is a free air conditioning weather season here. Basically, if your house gets hot, you open the windows. If it gets cold, you shut them. Call it window thermostat season because that's kind of where we are right now. But don't look for a ton of rain. 5-day rainfall forecast shows minimal rain, 20% tomorrow, and you see how tiny that chance is. Maybe just a little sliver along Interstate 40, and That's it. So if we don't get rain tomorrow, it could be a while. We'll talk about this with Tim as well. We're probably going to have Melissa forming here pretty soon. I do believe that we're going to see that form probably somewhere in the next 24 to 36 hours, if not by 11 o'clock tonight, because that looks pretty well organized. 70% in the next 2 days, 90% in the next 7. Here's the good news. This is typically where we see tropical systems this time of year. The same cold fronts, the dry fronts, that's going to steer this thing away from us if it were to develop. Not that we couldn't use some of the moisture, honestly, just a little bit maybe. But this looks to either be a Central America storm or it's going to recurve to the northeast and stay out to sea. But that would be Melissa on our names of tropical systems. So possibly we could have a named system within the next 2 days, and Tim and I will be obviously tracking that, but something we'll keep a close eye on. The jet stream pattern, we're starting to see more of a fall-like pattern. What that means is look at the dips in the jet stream. There's one. Here comes another one next week. This one next week, that's a setup right there that could lead to a wet pattern. Why? Well, you look at that. That's a cutoff low essentially over the middle of the country. Let me grab my cursor here. And so what this low will do, this low will pull up a lot of Gulf moisture, and it will help produce and bring out some rain. So this is actually a pretty good sign of a change in the pattern. This is next Wednesday, by the way, not this Wednesday. So this is next Wednesday, which is what, the 29th, I believe, or 28th. 31st is Friday. That's Halloween.
Next Wednesday,
so that would
is
be
the 29th.
So it would be the 29th. So this is the Wednesday before Halloween, basically. This could be a pretty wet pattern next week, which could be a good thing. Not that I want it to rain on trick-or-treating, but that's a pattern we'll have to watch. And I'll quickly kind of show you how this looks on our long-range futurecast. I have to back up a little bit here just to give you an idea. So this week's front, you're going to see this. I'm going to play it. Not much there, right? We're dry. We go into the weekend, dry. But here comes that upper low. And you can see on Sunday it kind of developing and then kind of pushing. And look at that. That's a pretty wet pattern the middle of next week. That's...
Get it out of here by Friday.
Yeah, so let's get it out of here by Halloween, but that's something to keep an eye on for next week. So quick look at your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast. We'll pop it up real quickly. The story this week is going to be dry. Temperatures in the 60s and 70s, morning lows in the 40s. Stick around, though. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk more about fall color, the astronomy stuff going on this week, and much more with Tim Buckley. Stay there. All right, welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me, as always, from WFMY. Tim, we got a zoom in of this great sunset coming up this evening.
Yes.
6:42 down our way, so a little bit earlier for you guys up there. But yeah, the sunsets, it's golden hours happening sooner and sooner now.
My instinct is taking over that I shouldn't be looking at that because it's too bright. But it's just a camera. We can look at it all we'd like to. It's a nice view.
Yeah, we're not going to hurt our
even
eyes.
More now. Thanks, James.
Yeah, James zoomed in on it. So yeah,
I was trying to get the mountains.
Yeah, you can actually see the kind of mountains off in the distance. We got such great visibility this time of year. Our Dallas camera can see. I mean, I'm zoomed in on Beach, Grandfather Mountain. Yeah, you can see some of the mountains now showing up pretty clearly. And like you showed when you were up there, Tim, zooming in from the Blue Ridge Parkway down here to Charlotte, we can zoom in on the mountains now pretty good from here as well. So it's pretty cool.
And it does not prove the flatness of the earth in any way. The math checks out. It's all good.
Yeah, it all works out. So, yeah, let's start with that because, we've got some earlier sunsets now. We've got some great fall colors starting to pop even closer to our area. But for the mountains, kind of a little bad news, good news thing. There's still some good color up there. I was in Asheville on Sunday. Color there is great, but honestly, above 3,500 feet, it's kind of fading pretty quick, Tim.
I'm curious, how it was around town when you're in Asheville and the valleys and everything.
Yeah.
But certainly I agree. And with the high winds that were happening, not just in the mountains, but in the Piedmont too, I imagine that was going to kind of be the death door for a lot of the higher elevations. You're just going to bring those leaves right down. So it's kind of too late to get up on the parkway levels, it seems like.
Yeah, that's what we noticed a lot. They were blowing all over Asheville. They were beautiful in downtown Asheville, by the way. I thought it was, I wouldn't say it was peak, but it was pretty high color in Asheville. And then just driving there on 26 from the upstate, you can kind of see the transition coming out of the upstate where there's still green, and then you get closer to Asheville and it really begins to pop. So I came in from like the south side because we went 74 to 26 over there. And it's still, I'm excited to see the color in the foothills in the next couple of weeks, areas around like South Mountains, Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, Hickory, Lenore, those areas are going to start having some good color here pretty soon.
And I'm even a little surprised just in our area up here in Greensboro and Winston-Salem, place like that. There's a big difference between now and just about like 4 days ago.
Yes.
So a lot of trees have kind of started to give up a little bit, and you're starting to see not only some change, but also some leaf drop too. And so that might be a sign that our color season might not be quite as good as we'd like it to be, given the drought. Not totally unexpected, but there are a lot of leaves on the ground, a lot of leaf blowing going on in people's yards, that kind of thing. That's already happening locally, and so we might start to see high levels of color up around me as early as this weekend. We see that on this camera right here. There's some pretty good fall color. Is that your Dallas camera?
Yeah, so that's in Gaston County, so that's one county west of Charlotte, and so you see some pretty vivid color mixed in there. I would agree, Tim. Even driving to work, we have a tree-lined road into the station here, and there's a ton of leaves on the ground. I mean, it's like the leaves all shedded everything pretty quickly. And I noticed even in my yard, the leaves are blowing around. And, some of that is unfortunately drought stress, but I also think these cool nights and these warm afternoons are starting to make a pretty quick transition as well. In fact, our meteorologist Becca Birdsall talked about the drought today and the impact it could have in the Piedmont. When we talked last week with Dr. Neufeld, he said, the mountains are doing okay because they had some rain, but here in the Piedmont, it might be a different story because of the drought conditions we're experiencing before the leaves change color. This is what Becca did today for her Weather IQ.
With the low fall foliage color now in the Piedmont, you might notice some of the leaves already look dry or faded. That's a sign of drought stress. The mountains only under a slight drought, which means minimal impacts. Here in Charlotte, we're in a moderate drought, and that stress is already showing up in our trees. Some leaves are browning and dropping early, a clear sign they're struggling without enough water. Right now, much of the Carolinas and a large portion of the country is experiencing some level of drought. Normally, a beautiful fall display happens when warm, sunny days are followed by cool, crisp nights with plenty of moisture in the soil. But when the ground is dry, trees go into survival mode, conserving energy instead of producing those vivid pigments that create the rich colors we love. That means leaves turn earlier, colors are less vibrant, think more muted browns and yellows, and leaves drop sooner, cutting the season short. So this fall, if the colors seem a little dull or short-lived, it's not your imagination. With the Weather Impact Team, I'm meteorologist Becca Birdsall.
Yeah, so that kind of checks out with what we're seeing here locally. And unfortunately, I think that's probably we're going to see a lot of dull color, Tim, because of that. And, we didn't get much rain yesterday. How much did you guys end up getting with that front yesterday?
Yeah, most everybody was less than 1/10 of an inch, so it was basically nothing. And this week, I'm a little surprised that the short-term models are showing some chance of rain tomorrow evening now, so we'll see what happens with that. But again, we need a pattern change, and maybe next week is the one for us, but we've seen that fizzle out before, so we'll wait till we get a little closer.
Yeah, I got so excited yesterday. I saw the first rain and it seemed like forever, and we only got 0.07 hundredths of an inch. But that was the first rain we saw in 19 days, the first measurable rainfall here. So that was kind of a big deal. That tied for our longest dry streak of the year. The previous dry streak of 19 days, which we tied with, was in this September. So that kind of shows you how dry it's been around here. We've had two 19-day stretches in the last 60 days. So it's been really dry. Yeah, I think tomorrow another kind of bummer. I think just enough to maybe get some water spots on the windshield, and that's about it.
Exactly.
One thing that would help, Tim, would be some tropical moisture. And so while we're talking about fall color, we're still in the heart of hurricane season, but hurricane season begins to shift south, and kind of in the climatological normal spot is in the southern Caribbean between South America and the islands there. And sure enough, Tim, I'm surprised, honestly, this isn't potential tropical cyclone yet, because it looks like it's got some organization already.
It really could be, and I know we have my graphics on the screen right here, and this is not formed yet. It's not called Melissa yet, but it probably will be sometime soon. So I was just out of curiosity using our in-house model that we have to kind of see what it's thinking, and it kind of tracks along with one of the thought groups on the two options with the system. Some are bringing it farther west, others are curving it more north pretty quickly, and this would be a bad thing for Haiti and for the Dominican Republic. And interesting, Brad, our model is doing that quite as early as Wednesday. Some would have it be a lot later than that, but the storm system right now, it's already right about here. So it doesn't have far to travel. It's more of a rate of speed thing and what's picking it up kind of a thing in this regard. So they give it a 90% chance of forming, and like you said, typically we see a potential tropical cyclone or a PTC declared whenever it's within range of somebody getting in danger within the next couple of days. And it would seem that is pretty close, not for the U.S., but for places like Hispaniola.
Yeah, I think they would want to issue some watches here pretty soon, so that PTC might be the way to go. We can look at the super ensembles, and James, you pull up my laptop here, and what you were showing, Tim, has kind of like become like the trend here. This is all of the ensembles, so just not one run of a model. We've got multiple runs, and you could see there's a distinct split, but there's a little bit of that right turn towards Hispaniola being favored now, I would say, more so than South America. What you do notice is nothing heading towards the U.S., Tim, and I think because you have these persistent trough now coming down over the East Coast, it kind of keeps everything away from the U.S. So this probably no threat to us, but boy, man, Hispaniola is such a mountainous island, Haiti, Dominican Republic. That would be a horrible flood setup for them if it did that.
It would, and we see that from time to time, right? It's kind of their biggest threat a lot of times with these tropical systems. This is also one of the areas of the Atlantic Basin that has not been touched. Yep. There are a lot of places that haven't been touched this season, including the Gulf and including the Caribbean. And this is just, a quick satellite estimate, but just querying a couple areas down here. Total bathwater. I mean, truly, at 90 degrees or so. There's all we call the oceanic heat content. Basically, not just the top of the water, but all the way down through the column of the ocean toward the top. There's so much heat for this storm to take advantage of. Typically, what you need is just those more favorable winds. And in the Caribbean, typically that isn't really achievable until this time of year, and that's when they start to light up a little bit.
It's funny you said that. I was just thinking, so I started, because I'm thinking of like some of the biggest storms down. I remember Hurricane Mitch that formed down in that area late October as well. It was one of the most powerful hurricanes in the Atlantic, but it was a late October system and it impacted Honduras. But it's in that same sweet spot you just talked about, Tim. So you can get super hot water there this time of year, and it's kind of between the troughs and the jet stream, so the wind shear tends to be relaxed down there. And looking at, I'm trying to think of the date of Mitch. I'm just looking back. I want to say it was late.
Was it late 90s?
98. Yeah, it was a Cat 5.
Yeah.
157 mile per hour wind. I mean, gosh, I'm trying to look at the date. So it actually formed in September. I thought it was later than that, but late September, 27th. But yeah, it kind of formed in that spot down there. And that's one of the storms I remember. Those late season storms down there tend to get pretty strong pretty quick.
I'm showing a satellite image here that says October 26th of 1998. So
that sounds right.
I think your gut is right on this one.
Yeah, I'm looking at a different storm then.
Scary system. That's one of those I remember watching on the old school Weather Channel back in the day, and John Hope was tracking it and those kind of things. And Cat 5 in those days didn't seem to be quite as common, or at least in my smaller memory it wasn't. And that was a big storm. And like you said, this is the time of year that the Caribbean starts to wake up. And a lot of times they don't tend to impact us. We were talking about with Hazel.
Yeah.
Not that long ago with Hazel coming in the 50s. That's our latest on record big Carolina hurricane anniversary that is kind of noteworthy.
Yeah, you're right. So I'm looking at it now and pulling it up. I just remember the death toll from this was crazy. So the death toll, this is one of the deadliest hurricanes ever to strike in the Atlantic Basin. It's approximate because we don't know for sure, but get this. In Central America alone, they think 11,374 people died from Mitch.
Goodness.
Mudslides and landslides in Honduras and Nicaragua. So, that's an all-timer for that area. That is one that people will never forget down there. And I remember it too, those late 90s storms. And I just remember the satellite images thinking, oh my gosh, this is a monster hurricane. And it was late October. So that's an area we watch this time of year. That's like so thinking that we could have a Melissa, another M storm in the same location is kind of interesting and something we'll have to watch closely. But for everyone wondering, that is kind of the area we watch. Late season storms tend to be down there farther south, or they end up being out in the Atlantic, and sometimes they're subtropical in the North Atlantic. But the season starts shifting away from the U.S. slowly but surely the later we get into the season. And while I don't want to jinx us, Tim, we could use some rain, but not a hurricane. Once we get past about the 15th, 20th of the month, it's like we said with Hazel, that's kind of when we say, okay, that's kind of when the worst chances of hurricanes at least go down, not to zero, but go down substantially for us.
Yeah, I guess the main thing right now, and unless we see something dramatically change, just if you have any friends, family that are cruising down there or something like that could affect their vacation. Caribbean is usually a pretty safe spot to be, but maybe not in October, and maybe not this week, right? So that'll be an impact to the travel industry for U.S. interests.
Yeah, so let's transition to something that's kind of exciting this week. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I am into astronomy, but my social media feed fills with all this kind of crazy astronomy stuff, and a lot of it's hype, Tim. I think you've joked about this, that meteor showers and full moons have great PR agents, because I swear they get more hype for something that's really not that big a deal. But we actually have a pretty big deal this week, Tim. There's actually a comet that is not naked eye visible, but with a simple pair of binoculars or a smartphone or just a cheapy telescope, you could see this in the night sky. To me, this is the event of the week, not the Orionid meteor shower, which is not a big deal. It's only a couple per hour. We get that every year. But Comet Lemon, I actually pulled this. This is a live, this is from software that I use. This is a live look on where it would be in the sky right now at sunset from Charlotte. And you're looking northwest, and I'll widen this out just a little bit because off to the right, I'm going to put the labels on here just so we can see it. The Big Dipper, which is right here, that's the Great Bear. That's the tail of it, the Big Dipper. It would be right about there. But that's actually probably what you would see right now if you looked in that direction, Tim. It's not super easy to see. But the great thing with modern smartphones, if you just have a pretty decent iPhone or Android phone and you aim it towards that part of the sky and have a steady hand or a tripod and take a couple second exposure, that night mode, you're probably going to be able to zoom in on the picture afterward and probably see this.
Yeah, I think the tough part is just kind of getting that initial location. So you're best served to find that constellation first. Yeah. So using your compass on the phone or just knowing your backyard, get to the northwest area, find the constellation, and then go to the left of that. And truly, it might be trial and error with this thing. You can use the night mode, make sure it's on at least like a 3-second or so exposure. And sometimes it'll even give you that in the preview before you even have to take a picture. But if not, you could take a picture and then kind of work from there, work backwards almost. And binoculars, like you said, probably the best thing to do. And as always, getting away from city lights is preferable and maybe necessary in this case.
What about weather producers with tower cameras? Do they have any chance of seeing?
See, that's the problem right now. This is the problem with our night sky. Sunset just happened. You're probably gonna have to wait till about 8 o'clock local time, Tim, for it to be dark enough to see this. But by that time, it's pretty low in the horizon. So there's your graphic. I think is a great view. So just to give you a perspective, that's only 10 degrees above the horizon, Tim. And if you hold your hand out with a closed fist, your fist is roughly about 20 degrees from your eye length, just to give you an idea. So this is pretty low. So if you have trees or buildings in the northwest of your backyard, you're probably going to have a tough time. You need a clear view of that horizon, which is half the battle, in my opinion, just having a wide open spot to see this thing.
What's been cool the last couple of years, though, is we've had a few of these minor comet events. They're not guaranteed. You don't always get these things. And there've been a couple of nice occasions where you've had opportunity to see these. And I've already gotten a couple of viewers that have been able to spot it. And I'm hopeful that this week, as this week goes on, it's a great time of year for this to happen because you have cold air. You have cold, crisp nights, and we've just been remarking on, wow, you can see Charlotte from, the next state over or whatever. That means there's great visibility. And so that'll give you the least obstruction, the least humidity, that kind of haziness in the air. You have your best chance, at least, to see it.
Yeah, I agree totally. That's why I like this time of year, because the visibility is great. And remember, we're losing about 2.5 minutes a day or so of sunlight. So that's why every night this week, this gets brighter, but you also get more time for it to be darker for you to see it. So if you don't see it tonight, don't get upset. It's really visible through the end of the month into early November. The peak time, looking at the light curve, so I look at this site called the Comet Database. It's actually a pretty cool site. It shows the light curve, which is the lower the number is the more magnitude. Just so you know, 4 is about the maximum for naked eye visibility in a city. 3 is usually what most people say. This peaks at about 4.1 on the 26th through the 1st. So, and that red line is perihelion. That's when it's closest to the sun. So if you kind of pick that sweet spot where it's super bright and it's close to the sun, might be the best time. But all week long, I got a new toy. I'm going to try to get a view of it tonight. I got a smart telescope. I'm going to give it a whirl. And if I get a good picture, we'll share it with you later this week, Tim.
Big ball of ice hurtling through space, and we get to see it.
All right, stick around. We've got more news coming up right after this break.